Welcome to the Heat versus the World podcast. And now, stand up and make some noise for your host, Joel Jacob.
What's up, Heat Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Heat versus the World podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joel Jacob, and you can follow me on Twitter at JoelKJacob_. Without further delay, let's meet today's correspondents. First, we got Anthony.
What's going on, y'all?
And then last but not least, Christian.
Hey, how's it going, Heat Nation?
All right, so to start it off, we got to talk about this recent win for the Heat against the Kings as Miami finally snapped their 4-game losing streak, improving their record to 48-28 while being back to being first place in the Eastern Conference. Leading the way, you got Jimmy Butler with 27 points and 3 3-pointers. Yes, that's right, guys. He had 3 3-pointers along with 7 assists and 5 rebounds. Bam Adebayo with 22 points and 15 rebounds, along with 2 steals. Tyler Hero with 20 points, 4 3-pointers, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. And then last but not least, Duncan Robinson with 15 points, all of those points coming from 5 threes of his own. It should also be noted that we saw some changes to the rotation with Victor Oladipo and Markieff Morris not getting any minutes, along with the Heat benching Duncan and starting Max Strus instead. After everything the Heat went through this last week, what's everyone's reaction to this past game as Miami is getting closer to the start of the playoffs? Kick us off, Anthony.
Well, first off, Joel, you said that Jimmy hit 3 threes. Like, that's a good thing. I don't know if I like that because that probably means he's going to keep taking more and more. Even after the game, he said that his teammates are encouraging him to shoot. And I guess it's good because it at least makes the defense stretch out to him if he's attempting them. But the way his form is, the way he kicks out that one leg, it's a line drive. The form's pretty disgusting. He's shooting like 19% this year. I would rather him stay away from taking 5 threes a game, but at least he hit a few. But as far as the rest of the game last night, I actually didn't get to watch it live because I was at my first adult men's basketball league game. We got a dub. Shout out my boys on Team Blackout. But I did go home and watch the replay at night. So don't ever call me a fake Heat fan because I was watching replay Heat Kings at like 1 a.m. So, but I had to see how the new rotation that Spoelstra implemented was going to work. So obviously, I think that was kind of the big story of the game because they took care of business finally against a bad team missing their star players. The main move he did is he started Max Strus instead of Duncan Robinson. I liked the move initially just because as a starter, Max Strus was shooting 45% on 10 attempts per game, which is just unreal. That is just amazing numbers. And obviously, we know Duncan's confidence was kind of one of his biggest issues. So I figured maybe him coming off the bench would help him because he'd get to settle his nerves. He'd get to feel out the game a little bit, from a visual perspective. And then he'll be able to come into the game more mentally prepared and not have to stress as much going against the starters on the other team. So Max Strus ended up not playing too well, but maybe it worked out for Duncan. I think he finished like 5 of 8 from 3. So he played really well. And then you saw a lot of great things from the star players too. So it was just nice to see that they took care of business last night.
Right. And how do you feel, Christian?
Well, for Miami fans, I do have news for you. 3 is the key. I was looking at the game, Jimmy Butler, 3 of 5 from 3. That's really good. I do agree with you that he shouldn't be taking that many threes because he's not the greatest 3-point shooter. But at the same time, I was looking back at some of the Miami Heat's more notable wins in the season. So if we just flash back to when the Miami Heat beat the full-strength Phoenix Suns without Bam or Jimmy, their whole starting lineup, each one of them had made a 3. Kyle Lowry went 5 of 10 from 3. Yurtseven 2 of 8. Caleb Martin 4 of 8. PJ Tucker 5 of 10. And then you have, I'm sorry, that's from the field. Either way, Duncan Robinson 8 of 16 from 3. The thing is when the Miami Heat end up playing bigger games, it's a matter of the 3 ball. And once the Miami Heat get that 3 ball going, it's a completely different game. So the fact that Jimmy was able to strike from the outside and stretch the floor, that was a really great sign for Miami. And it was just what the doctor ordered. Miami had been on a little bit of a losing skid. I mean, they lost 4 in a row. It wasn't pretty losses, especially to the Knicks. So it was a great way for Miami to get back on track and reclaim that first seed. I also just want to highlight that Jimmy and Bam both were very efficient from the floor. Jimmy went 10 of 14, Bam went 10 of 16, and we're starting to see that Bam can take a more authoritative stance on the offensive scoring, which I think is really great for him. And then, of course, off the bench, you have Tyler Hero, who scores 25 and 6 like it's nothing. So it was a really great night for Miami overall, and probably just what they needed to get them back on track.
Right. And Anthony, do you have anything you want to add on to this?
Well, yeah, aside from the rotation, because I know we were talking a little bit about this earlier, so I'm curious what you guys have to say about this, is we didn't see any Markieff Morris minutes last night, and we didn't see any Victor Oladipo minutes last night. Now, when we found out that Max Strus was starting, that obviously begged the question who was going to come off the bench. Honestly, I wasn't sure if Duncan was going to get any minutes last night. I figured maybe Spoelstra might try to see the rotation without him. And then especially with Caleb Martin being out, well, then I figure, okay, you have to at least either play him or Depot. And they played Duncan. They ended up not playing Depot. They ended up not playing Morris. As far as the Morris thing, that just might be more of a matchup thing. If the other team has some more bigger guys, they'll probably go Deadman. If they're probably some more smaller, switchier guys like Toronto, maybe he's more likely to lean Morris. But the Depot thing is interesting, man, because obviously the few games Depot's played this year, he hasn't looked great. Obviously, that's expected coming back, from a severe injury over a year. And we saw Gabe Vincent play last night. So as soon as Gabe Vincent was healthy, we saw him getting minutes instead of Depot. That's a question that I brought up a few pods ago. I asked the guys, I said, would you essentially rather play Gabe Vincent or Depot? I think I said Depot just because of reputation. But I said if Depot could give us what Gabe Vincent's given us all year, I would take it. Because in my opinion, relative to expectations, Gabe Vincent has had a really, really solid year for us. He played okay yesterday, but whether he's hitting his shot or not, the defense will always be there. And with Depot, it's a little tough to say just because of the injury concerns. So I don't know if that was a permanent thing. I don't know if supposed to just try and get out. But we'll see how it goes the next game, because obviously they got a big game against Boston that we'll get into later. So it'll be curious to keep an eye on how many minutes Depot gets. Maybe Spoelstra saw how bad they started playing, adding the new guys. So maybe he's just trying to go back to the rotation that worked for them for so much of this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's a matter of Victor Oladipo being out for so long and trying to get his legs back under him and incorporate him into the lineup. It doesn't seem to be working. I mean, the past 4 games have all been losses, and it's hard to blame that solely on Victor Oladipo, but even Markieff Morris too. A majority of the season, he wasn't here, and now you try to incorporate him back into a lineup that has had success. You've had people in, you've had people out, and you were able to still manage to get the first seed. So the fact is that if something like this is working, there's really not too much in my mind that I would do to change it. So, of course, you want to get Oladipo and Morris their minutes. They're pretty decent players. I mean, Oladipo was a fantastic player back in Orlando and Indiana, and Morris did provide some great minutes for you guys over the past couple seasons. But I think that the fact of the matter is when they haven't been playing, and you have players who've been playing with you night in and night out, that they know the formula to win to get to the number 1 seed, you got to keep those guys in. I think that it would be a liability to have them out there on the floor for extended periods of time over the people that have been with you the entire season.
Right. And Anthony, do you have anything more you want to add to this?
Nah, I mean, Christian hit the nail right in the coffin with that. Obviously, when you've had such a great year being in the number 1 seed, at the time they were over 20 games over 500. To add a couple different guys in that late in the season, maybe it's just not the best idea, because you don't exactly have enough time to get these guys readjusted into the lineup. You don't want to be slumping going into the playoffs. You want to make sure you're in tip top and get all the kinks worked out instead of adding new guys in. So that's basically all I got to say. So he pretty much added everything.
Right. Overall, I mean, so quick thing I want to talk about is Jimmy taking more threes. I mean, I don't know. The thing for me is, like, I feel like if he could just simply hit a couple of them to the point where maybe he's like at least a 33% 3-point shooter come playoff time, like, I'd be all for it, So I don't know. So I'm not completely opposed to it. The idea of him just simply wanting to try taking a couple threes. Obviously, he went and made a few, so which was what got his confidence going. And, we don't know if this is going to be the same Jimmy in these upcoming games, but if he can just some way somehow increase that 3-point percentage to at least something like 33%, that's a huge win for us. And regarding like Victor Oladipo, one thing that I want to say is it's hard because I really wanted him to come back this year and bowl out. But one thing that, I was a bit skeptical about was the idea of him coming back in March. Like it seems like so late in the season with the playoffs literally like about a month away. For him to come back by then, there was a lot. I didn't know what to think about it. I assumed that if the Heat were just going to wait all the way till then, they probably had a good idea in mind regarding what they would see from Victor. So I didn't question it too much. But obviously, you see that Victor has not been able to contribute as much as you'd hope, which is why the Heat probably might pull the plug on Vic for the season. And, it sucks to see it, but hopefully we can get things going for him next season, hopefully get him more minutes. And, we just got to go from there because at the end of the day, we want to see this team win. And, if we want to increase the Heat's chances of succeeding this year, that unfortunately has to involve not giving Vic as much minutes as we originally thought he'd get with this team. But, that's basically all that there is to talk about when you look back at this past game. The next thing that I want to talk about with you guys is this losing streak, because although it's over, I feel like we have to talk about it. Because last week was tough. The Heat lost to a shorthanded Sixers and Warriors team while also blowing a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter to a trash Knicks team as well, while wrapping it up with a blowout loss against the Nets. Now, it also didn't help that there was the whole fight, and we're not going to get into detail about it because at the end of the day, you never want to see a fight happen, but with the Heat, we know how intense some of these practices can get and stuff. Like they do this, behind the scenes and everything. And it's probably not just Jimmy. We probably see it with other players as well. Like, I just don't feel the need to go too detailed into it. We just simply saw one of those intense practices, come into a game, seeing all that take place. So, like I said, we're not going to go too deep into all that. But basically, watching all of that unfold, these past few losses, like, how do you guys feel when looking back at last week? And how much does it concern you as we get ready for the postseason? Because, yeah, we beat the Kings, but, they're a team that's going to be out of playoff contention very soon. Like, what's on your mind when you think about last week? Like, you're up first, Christian.
Doesn't feel good. It really doesn't feel right to watch such a great team at almost full strength lose to these shorthanded teams. And I know we joked about it last podcast, like, oh, when an opposing team has their stars out, Miami will find a way to lose, but they'll be able to guard the stars better. But I do think that there is concern there, that the fact that the Warriors team missing Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, that they really couldn't get it done. Draymond wasn't even playing either. And then against the Sixers team, you didn't have Embiid, didn't have Harden. So it was just a really, really tough 2 losses for them against teams that are, albeit they're contenders, they're deeper teams. So they do have role players that can step up, but you're losing to these teams that don't have their main stars. So it's almost a paradox to me. And then they go along and lose to the Knicks, who are way out of the playoff picture right now. They're out of the play-in. So that's really, really just a tough loss. And then going home and losing to Brooklyn by such a large amount. I mean, I think the margin was close to 30 by the end of the third quarter. So that's just not what you need to see if you're a Miami Heat team heading into the postseason. So I think that my main concern here would be that you're sort of, like skidding across the finish line. The best time for a team to get hot is like what Boston's doing right now. And they're having their win streaks and they're winning, 7 out of 8 games, 8 out of 10 games towards the end of the season, because towards the end of the season is the closest basketball you're going to be playing to the postseason. So that's where my concern lies. But as far as Miami being able to get it done in the postseason, I have no doubt that this team that's gotten to the first seed will have any issues taking care of matchups in the playoffs. I think that the Miami Heat know how to elevate their play in the playoffs. Spoelstra is nowhere near a rookie as far as it comes to playoff basketball. So I don't think that there's too much concern there. But the fact of the matter is Miami needs to learn how to take teams that have their stars out more seriously, or just actually generate a level of urgency when you're playing these teams, because each game matters. I mean, a couple of days ago, they were out of the first seed. Boston loses a game. They fall 3 seeds. Now they're in the first seed. You don't want Miami to have an unfavorable matchup in the first round that could really put a damper on their playoff run.
Right. And Anthony, how about you?
Well, Christian brings up some good points. All right, but I'm going to speak on the other side of that. And first of all, too, Joel, you said now that the losing streak is over. I mean, technically the streak is over, but I don't want to quite say they're out of their slump yet. Obviously, we have to see how they play in their next game for me to feel really good about this team. But I just want to speak on, the shorthanded losses, losing to teams without their stars. This is the NBA. That type of stuff happens when teams have their star players out, guys step up. That's been happening for all of time. And just as many losses as the Heat have this year to teams missing their stars, we have just as many wins with us missing our stars. So that's just sports. And at the end of the day, that all kind of evens out. And as far as being worried about that, I would actually probably take the opposite approach as Christian, because those aren't the teams we're playing in the playoffs. So why would I be concerned that we can't beat teams without star players when those are not who we're facing in the playoffs? We're not facing the Knicks in the playoffs. As of just yesterday, the Brooklyn Nets aren't even in the playoffs. They were the number 9 seed before Charlotte lost. So losing to these bad teams and playing down to our competition, that's not of concern to me, because we're not going to play down to the competition in the playoffs. Everybody tries 100% in the playoffs. So that specifically isn't really a concern to me. Going on to the Boston topic, is Christian said Boston's getting hot at the right time. I kind of disagree with that too. Boston put themselves in such a hole, and I think they've won like 29 of 34 or something like that. So that's been going on for the last 2 to 3 months. So they've been, they've dug themselves in such a hole. They've had to play so hard and so well for so long. They could be burnt out come playoff time. It's not like they're getting hot all of a sudden, gearing up going to the playoffs. No, they got to this point because they were so far down. They spent a long, long time working the way all the way back up as a team from Miami, who's still been kind of cruising. Star players been out, been missing in, and they've still been able to maintain relatively good position. Not to mention, there's still 2 weeks before the playoffs. People are saying, oh, Miami's slumping at the wrong time. I mean, are they? Because if we win the next 7 games that we have left, we'll be on an 8-game win streak. Everybody's going to feel great about our chances. So if that's the case, you could argue that Miami got the perfect time, because they still got 2 weeks, to fix everything and get, like in their perfect conditioning right before the playoffs, opposed to peaking too early, like a team like Boston. That's actually a concern that I had about Miami, because we had that week playing all the gauntlets in the East, and we had beat everybody except that Milwaukee game, which we blew. I was starting to get worried that we peaked too early. So part of, going into a slump and seeing what your issues are and being able to address them still 2 weeks prior to the playoffs, I think that can actually work to Miami's benefit. Now, the concern comes that from the fact that they do have some pretty glaring issues, primarily their late game execution. That's kind of been a thing all year. They're 1-8 in overtime games, the 1 win coming against Charlotte. So that's kind of my biggest issue with them, is that they have to fix that. And aside from that, it was just a lot of guys getting cold at the same time. Max Strus has shot very poor over the last 2 weeks. We all know about PJ Tucker's struggles. Before Gabe Vincent got hurt, he couldn't hit a shot anymore. So a lot of guys getting cold at the same time also contributed to that. But at the end of the day, it's a long season. As Pat Riley would say, everybody's got to get a grip. You got to stay together if you got the guts. Don't just get the first door and run out of it, because all teams go through slumps. I actually just posted a video on my YouTube channel 2 days ago. Y'all could check it out if you search Anthony DiNardo. I basically went into detail on all the slumps and losing skids that every contender this year has gone through, as well as all the previous championship Heat teams. In 2020, when we went to the finals in the bubble, they had 2 stretches where they lost 7 of 9. That's worse than what we've done now. In 2014, when we went to the finals, they had a bad 5-game losing streak. In 2013, the year we won 27 games in a row, we had a very bad 4-game losing streak. And that's just what we went through just, last week with this Heat team. So all that to say, the season's a long roller coaster, and they got 2 weeks to prove themselves and fix these issues. And I'm glad it's happening now as opposed to the playoffs. So what do you guys got for me?
Well, I think that you're right. You did actually make some really good points. I agree that like if you guys had your slump just now and you do end up winning the rest of the games for the season, it does look good. I mean, you guys have a pretty easy layup going into the postseason. You guys have Charlotte, Atlanta, and then Orlando to finish off the season. So you should at least hopefully have a win to end the season versus Orlando. But I think that, it's still concerning to the fact that, yeah, you guys beat teams when they had their stars and you guys did it. And it goes back and forth like that. But it's just like a mentality thing too. It was like you guys trying to figure it out. And I know you don't want to bring up the little skirmish that happened on the sideline between Spo and UD and Jimmy, but I think that was a positive thing, because when things go wrong and people aren't saying anything and they have their heads buried in their towels, almost like the Los Angeles Lakers, they've been a dumpster fire since the start of the season, pretty much. That's pretty much like giving up. But you guys have the fire in you. I mean, Miami Heat, to just rival each other. You guys have different philosophies and you're trying to make sure that you create the best winning product out there on the floor. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, so these guys are for real. Like, this is a real thing that's happening. You guys are fighting for what seems to be the right way to win. And everyone you want the same end goal to win. So I think as far as the losing streak, it was something that is more beneficial than not, because you have that frustration get out. You have, you kind of know what it's like to lose, especially games that you don't feel that you should lose. And then at a certain point, you're saying, okay, well, we got this win versus Sacramento. We have the rest of the season. And now we can kind of just play into the playoffs, having gotten that past, you had that big blowout, and all of a sudden you're ready to face that playoff competition.
Well, I mean, first of all, great points again. The one thing I do want to add too, because I agree with your point about the whole scuffle against Golden State. I'm with you. It seemed like Heat Nation was 50-50 on that. Some people were freaking out. People understand, that this team is brothers, and what do you do with your brothers? You fight with them. Plus, we know Jimmy likes the type of person that if you have something to say it to his face. And Udonis Haslam and Eric Spoelstra very clearly said it to his face. So I agree with everything you said on that. So the one question I had is, though, if Jimmy and UD was to get into a fight, who do you all got your money on? Because I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably say UD.
Oh, that's tough.
I mean, I'd pick UD against anybody in the league except for maybe Steven Adams. But I'm just curious in what
no. Jimmy, okay, I think Jimmy's about it. I think Jimmy's always been about it.
100%.
UD though, I think
he got that grown man strength, man. That grown man strength.
We're gonna sit here and pretend like Jimmy ain't a grown man though. Like,
I know you're right. You're right.
I mean, I think Jimmy grown, but at the end of the day, I don't think that they would even like want to fight each other. No. I think it's one of those things you get face to face. Someone's gonna hit like when MJ gave Steve Kerr that black eye. Someone's gonna hit someone. Mm-hmm. They realize that they took it too far. But all things considered, I hate even thinking about this. Isn't Jimmy a black belt though?
That's James Johnson.
That's James Johnson. No, Jimmy has some karate experience though, right?
He could have 2 black belts. I'm still picking UD.
But like, let's not go too deep into this, especially because we do got more to talk about.
Hey, Jimmy, if you're watching this, just know. Oh, never mind. I hope you're not watching this because you never mind. Okay, go ahead.
Jimmy, about it.
Go ahead.
So now, overall, I'm not really too concerned about it. I think we could just simply turn everything around this week. We'll be able to do good. Like, I find it so funny, though, that last week, Miami was having a terrible week, but you then look at the Dolphins and the Canes. The Canes made the Elite Eight for the first time ever. And then you got the Dolphins who went and got Tyreek Hill. Like, they were having their best weeks yet. And then you had the Heat who was struggling. So I think Miami just had to sacrifice just for those two teams to succeed. So now that those two teams were able to get what they needed, Miami could just head into this week and just bowl out. Hopefully that's the case. So we'll see what happens there. But let's see. Moving forward, I now think it's time that we talk about this playoff picture for Miami because it's constantly changing for us. We were so confident, I think the last pod, that the Heat were going to stay the 1 seed and that maybe all the other seeds would remain the way how it is. But nah, it keeps changing. And all we know so far is that if if the regular season was to end today, Miami would have to play either one of the four teams that are in seed 7 and 10 while having to face the winner of Celtics and Bulls in the second round. Seeing the way how the current playoff picture looks, like, are you guys fine with the position that the Heat is in right now? Or do you guys think that things could be better for us? Like, what's your take, Anthony?
Well, I mean, you started off by saying if we were to stay where we're at now, that alone leaves a possibility of 4 different play. The teams in the play-in is obviously the Cavs, Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Atlanta. If we was to drop to 2, then we would either play the Cavs or Brooklyn. But if we were to drop to 3, Chicago. If we were to drop to 4, we could play Toronto. So can you hear me? It says my connection's unstable.
Yeah, no, we're here. Also,
Okay.
I think that if you're 3, it's Toronto. If you're 4, it's Chicago.
You're right. I did mess it up here. So obviously, it almost seems as of right now we could almost play anybody, which is this kind of scary part because it'll kind of make us hard to kind of game plan, and we won't really know until the time comes because we are playing a play-in team. So maybe that's a bit of a disadvantage. While other teams that are in the 3 through 6 spot can prepare for their matchup, we kind of have to wait and see how the play-in turns out, especially being the number 1 seed, because you have to wait for both rounds of the play-in to determine. But I mean, we've got into this before. There's a lot of good teams in the East. I don't think there's any pushovers in the top 10. Originally, I was pretty scared of Cleveland, but obviously they got a lot of injuries now that'll make that, maybe a little bit of an easier matchup. Obviously, everybody likes to talk about Brooklyn, but my thoughts on them have been well documented. That would be who I want to play in the first round matchup, partly because I don't think they could beat us, and 2, just because I want to shut everybody up. But Boston would be the second round matchup now. If you would ask me 2 weeks ago, that would have scared me. But now that they lost Robert Williams, it remains to be seen how good they're going to be without him, because that's a major, major loss. But there's no pushovers, man. So all these people talking about tanking or angling for position to play. Like, who really do you want to play? Because I don't know who I'd prefer, to be honest with you.
Right. And what's on your mind, Christian?
Well, there are 2 main things that I've been thinking about. Number 1, the number 1 through 4 seed, the 76ers, Bucks, and Celtics are each 1 game behind Miami. So if we see a 1 to 2 game slip in these last 6 games for Miami, there could be some definite mix-ups here. So that's kind of the volatility of the playoff picture for Miami right now, is we don't know if Miami is going to be retaining the 1 seed and playing one of the 7 through 10, the 2 seed. And again, they have that possibility, or if they can potentially drop to the 3 or 4 seed. And now all of a sudden they have a matchup against the Raptors or the Bulls. I think that looking at Miami's schedule to finish out the season, there's only 6 games left. The next one is against the Celtics. That'll probably be the most difficult matchup. Even though they're missing Robert Williams, the Celtics are still a very tough team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And then you guys should be able to beat the Bulls, the Raptors. I can see you guys beating. And then, of course, we talked about the last 3 matchups at the end of the season: Hornets, Hawks, Magic. I see those as wins for you as well. So I don't really think that there's too much turnover in the fact that Miami will retain the number 1 seed. I can see Miami beating every team they have left on their schedule. And even if they win, 5 out of 6, there's still a really good chance that they're going to keep that 1 seed. As far as who they're going to see in the first round, I think it's going to be a decently tough matchup. I agree with Anthony. None of these top 10 teams are really pushovers. Even the Hawks, I think they're starting to figure it out as of late. So they wouldn't be the best first round matchup for Miami. But at the same time, they're still a 1 seed. They still have 2 legit bruiser stars in Jimmy and Bam. Kyle Lowry to facilitate, Tyler Hero as the 6th man, and the shooting provided by Vincent, Strus, Duncan. You guys are definitely a juggernaut. So whoever does have that 8th seed matchup, I think it's going to be really dangerous. And I think I just want to talk about Anthony. Did you just call me out when you said I want to shut everyone up when you're talking about the Brooklyn Nets and Miami beating them? Because I think we might have just played recently, and there was like a little bit of conflict there. I think Brooklyn won. I don't remember the score though. You want to help me out on that?
I think it said that we're up 3-1 in the season series.
Oh yeah, that's right. But like the most recent game's the most accurate game because we have our players, you have your players, and
Hey, have fun in the play-in.
We will. Yeah, no, but I honestly, I enjoy Miami. I just don't want to see a Miami Brooklyn matchup like first round, because while it would be really entertaining, I think that's going to be bad for both teams because they're going to have to each give a lot, and it's going to gas them for the following rounds of the playoffs, whoever does end up winning.
Like, overall, it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the Heat the minute playoffs come. Now, one thing that I do want to hit on is what you said, Anthony, that you'd be down with playing Brooklyn in the first round. Like, honestly, I'm cool with playing any team in the East. The only thing is that, like, for a first round matchup, it would just simply be cool if Miami could take it easy. Because, like when you look at the current playoff picture, like Miami would have to play, like, let's say the Heat do end up playing the Nets, you play the Nets in the first round, and then we don't know exactly what's going to be Boston's situation with Robert Williams being out, but still, you'd have to play them in the second round unless something happens, in these next few games, or maybe they drop a few games, who knows? And then after that, you would then have to play either Milwaukee or, Philly, I'm not too scared of, mainly Milwaukee, So overall, I mean, I think the first round, it would be nice if Miami could just take on a simple team. If it could be someone like Cleveland, I'd be all for it. And then take on those tough teams after that. So yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that I'm afraid of Brooklyn, but for that first round series, it would just be extremely convenient if it could be a team where it could be an easy out against. Because while I do think that he could beat the Nets, it's not going to be an easy series at the same time. So overall, just give me Cleveland, and let's just try to end that series in 4, maybe 5 games. But, this next topic, is sponsored by HEAT Muse. Make sure to follow HEAT Muse on Twitter. Their handle is HEAT MUSE. They got all Miami Heat stats that you might be interested in. And they presented us a very intriguing stat to talk about. And that's how the Miami Heat are actually 12-7 when Bam averages less than 3 assists in those games. In 12 of those games, he has shot the ball 14 or more times. And we have a record of 8-3 when Bam shoots 14 times and records less than 3 assists. With that all being said, like, what do you guys make of this stat? Like, give us your thoughts, Christian.
So I just love how stats companies will come out with some certain stats, like if someone does this and they do this and they do that, and then, oh, look, the Heat win. But I think that this has been a theme echoed on the podcast for as long as I've been here, is that Bam needs to shoot more. And it's just right here in the stats. I just want to focus on the 8-3 when Bam shoots 14 plus times and records less than 3 assists. I think assists contribute to winning. So I don't think the fact that he has less than 3 assists really makes that much of a difference in the actual winning. I think the fact that he's shooting 14 plus times is way more important. We've been saying on this podcast that Bam, he only took 8 shots. He only took 9 shots, but he made 6 or 7 of them. Bam is really efficient. He takes great shots. And when Bam scores more, the Heat tend to win. It's not rocket science. Tyler Hero, to me, is the most important scoring component of Miami, but the second most important is Bam. When Bam shoots his shots and he's just making buckets, it's way easier for Miami to win because it pretty much presents that interior threat and it opens up the outside for shooting. As I said earlier in the podcast, the key is 3 for Miami. When Miami has great shooting nights from the 3-point line, they put a lot of shooters out there, they're going to win a lot more games than if, you have Jimmy shooting 0-5 and other people not really making 3-point shots. So I like this stat. I think it's a very accurate reflection of Miami's season when Bam's on the floor. And it just goes again to show that we do need Bam to shoot more. It's just more evidence for Bam to take a more authoritative role in the offense.
Right. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, again, he said it perfectly. We've been talking for years now how aggressive Bam is, best Bam. Listen, Bam Adebayo is a mismatch nightmare for 99% of the league. As you hear all the time, the cliche, he's too big for the little guys to guard him, and he's too quick for the big guys to guard him. He's a mismatch nightmare, and it seems like sometimes he realizes it, And then other times he just completely forgets, which is very frustrating, not even to mention the 3-point shooting, which he never wants to attempt, even though his form is gorgeous. It's not like Jimmy's. His is beautiful, full extension, great arc on the ball. That's why it makes it frustrating. He doesn't want to shoot. But regardless, he's a mismatch nightmare. It's frustrating when he doesn't realize it. To start the year, or in the preseason, actually, Pat Riley said that he thinks Bam could be a flat-out scorer. Bam said he wants to be a shooter this year, and we haven't really saw that. He's only averaging 0.4 more points this year than he was last year. So it's a marginal improvement, but I was really hoping to see him get over the 20 points per game. But of course, I'm not going to judge his season based off PPG because I think he's had a phenomenal season. He should be runaway defensive player of the year if you actually watch him night in and night out, which I know the voters don't do. They just go for the names like Draymond Green or Rudy Gobert, who gets played off the floor in the playoffs. So the fact that he can even win defensive player of the year is ridiculous to me, but I could go on for hours about that. But again, aggressive Bam is best Bam. Even going back to the assist thing, even if he has a ton of assists, to me, that means that he's not hiding away from the ball. He wants the ball in his hands. He's making plays. Sometimes it's dribble handoffs and that he has like his back to the basket, like 20 feet away, which I don't like. But sometimes it's him actually playing point guard. Like in yesterday's game versus the Kings, he had a beautiful near half court bounce pass to a cutting Tyler Hero. And then Tyler got stripped and ruined the highlight. But still, that's Bam being aggressive. The rebound, he brought the ball up the court. He didn't pass it. So I just think overall numbers for Bam, whether it's shot attempts or assists, all that can lead to aggressiveness. I even like to look more at free throw attempts because if his shot or attempts are down, a lot of it could be because he was attacking the basket and he got fouled. So obviously those aren't going as shot attempts. I'd love to see him get, 7 to 10 free throw attempts a game, or at least do it more often than he has. I actually just looked it up. He only has, I think it was like 8 games this year with at least double-digit free throw attempts. I'd love to see what someone like Joel Embiid is, but I'd imagine it's a lot more than that. Obviously, different type of player still, but for me, that seeing those free throw numbers, those shot attempts, those assists, those are all signs of aggressiveness. So it's not shocking to me to see that when he does have higher amounts in those numbers, they have a winning record. So I mean, I like to see it. It's a pretty good stat.
Right. I love the stat too. It just shows how great Bam really is to this team. And, I would love to see him shoot more. It's funny because then you have guys like Heat legends and Chris Bosh. And, he even said it himself that he always tells Bam to shoot more, that, if he was in his shoes, he would do it a lot more often. And, that would be a dream come true if we were to see Bam shoot more, especially from behind the arc, But overall, he's just had a great season and you just love to see it. And I honestly wonder, how great our record would have really been had it not been for him missing as much games as he missed. And, another thing that you said, Anthony, is that he would have probably been the runaway winner for Defensive Player of the Year had it not been for missing that much games with that thumb injury of his. So, overall, I think Bam has just been amazing. And, he's going to be a key part for the Heat come playoff time. So, overall, let's just hope he keeps it going because honestly, if it wasn't for that injury in the finals a couple of seasons ago, who knows what would have happened? His injury in Goran's, we probably would have had a 4th trophy by now, but let's not go too deep into that. Anyways, we talked so much on today's episode that before we close it out, we need to talk about this upcoming game for the Heat as they'll be playing the Celtics. The Celtics are top 4 in the Eastern Conference, and they have been a thorn to the Heat in the last 2 matchups against them. However, the Celtics will be shorthanded, as it was announced not too long ago that Robert Williams would be out indefinitely with a torn meniscus and will not be reevaluated until a few weeks from now. Bearing all of this in mind, what's everyone's expectations for this game, and do you guys see the Heat getting the win? Tell us your take, Anthony.
Robert Williams has been a big reason for their success of late. Supposedly, he is also in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. I haven't watched him enough to say that opinion myself, but I've heard from people who do watch a lot. Apparently, he's been balling. Apparently, he's a very good shot blocker. He's very good rotating on defense. And obviously, the Boston Celtics have statistically the greatest defense in the league. So it's very clear that Robert Williams was a big part of that. Obviously, first and foremost, I hope he's okay. I've heard reports he could miss a few weeks, which was a little weird to me because I heard a torn meniscus. I never heard of that being a few weeks type of injury. But obviously, just hope he's okay. But the fact that he will be out, obviously, I like our chances just because of that, whether in the next game or a potential playoff matchup. But I liked it even more when I realized that they have Daniel Tice's bum self back, because we all know Bam Adebayo is his daddy. So I didn't even know that they got him back. I thought he was on Houston or something. So when I at the other day, I said, that's going to be light work, man. So I'm going to say Heat by 27 points.
I won't get
Damn.
because I feel like whenever we're too confident, we do end up losing.
Joe, you saw Game 6 in 2020. You saw how Bam feasted on him. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, I know Bam should be feasting this game, that's for sure. But I don't want to be too confident now because we know the Heat's track history when it comes to playing against short-handed teams, So, but yeah, Christian, how about you though?
Wow, that's a lot of points. I know Williams is important, but I didn't think
Daniel Tice though.
It's Daniel Tice, but give the Celtics some credit. If Tatum and Brown don't play, I'll give you those numbers. But geez, no, that's a lot to me. But no, I do see this as a win for Miami. Just Robert Williams not playing, that's a huge blow to Boston. And I mean, everything you said, Anthony, I pretty much have to echo that. I couldn't have said it too much better myself. But the fact is, he's been such a great player for Boston this season, and he's just below all-star level for me. Like, he's a star center, and he's what Boston has been looking for. They've been needing a man in the middle for a very long time. So the fact that he's not playing, even if Tatum and Brown are playing, it's going to be a difficult game for Boston to manage. And I think Boston, after this win streak, they're going to have to learn to manage without Williams for the next couple of weeks. I mean, again, I haven't heard of a meniscus tear that lasted only a couple of weeks. I think that there's a little bit more to it. Maybe they're trying to calm down the fans first, but I don't think Boston's going to fare too well the rest of the season. Tatum and Brown are going to carry, but without that help in the middle, it's going to be more difficult for Boston to win games. So I am going to give this game to Miami, and I'm going to say they'll probably win it by about 8 or 9 points because I think Tatum and Brown are going to keep it competitive. But towards the end of the game, the shooting of Miami, it's just they're not going to be able to be matched by Boston. Boston's defense is what's going to keep them in the game. But without Williams in the middle, it's definitely a big liability to have Tice fill that role.
Yeah, I think that they drafted Robert Williams. Let me see up here. They drafted him 27th back in 2018. And at the time, they had still needed a center back then too. So I remember thinking that is the potential to be a great pickup because supposedly he was a lottery round talent. But I remember hearing he had like a lot of motor issues, which is why he kind of fell in the draft. So the fact that they were able to get a player that great that late in the draft, you can see it's setting them up now, 4 or 5 years down the line to be a potential contender in the playoffs. So he's a good player. I feel bad for him. I hope he gets back soon.
Yeah, overall, to sum up what you guys said, I also see the Heat winning by that much. I don't know what you said, Anthony, but basically what you guys said, like I expect the Heat win. How much, I'm not sure. But, with Robert Williams out, that is going to be huge. And I don't know how long he'll be out either. Like you guys said, I was pretty surprised when they said that it would only be for like a few weeks. Obviously they got to reevaluate him come then. But, we'll see what happens there. And with him being out, we don't know what's going to happen, exactly how much of a threat they're going to be. As you guys give your predictions about Celtics probably not going to be that good for the rest of the season, not having that defensive boost in him. It's going to be tough for them. And, we'll see if they'll be able to manage without Robert Williams. So for me personally, I have the Heat winning this, like I said before, especially because I think now that they finally ended that losing streak against Sacramento, they're going to use this momentum to keep it going. So, overall, I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat do pick up the win. If anything, I think it might be a bit of a close game because we all know that short-handed teams are the worst teams for the Heat to face. So if anything, it might be a close game. If not, maybe by 10 points if it does end up being somewhat of a blowout. So that's my prediction for that. But, overall, We talked so much on today's episode that before we close it out, we just want to make sure that you guys follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HVTW Podcast while checking out our website at hvtwpodcast.wordpress.com, as the article recently dropped earlier today. And that's basically it. So, make sure you get access to all your Miami Heat content provided by yours truly. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Heat versus the World podcast. And we'll see you guys soon with another episode. And just like that, hit my music because we out.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Heat versus the World podcast.